So we've talked quite a bit about the various items of clothing that we've been wearing the last couple of days and the Adventure Spec range, really. When you look at them holistically all together, they all come under this banner of ADV layering, which is something that, or the idea of layering has been quite commonplace in the outdoor mountaineering kind of world. But in terms of motorcycling, it's not really been embraced until now. So what is ADV layering, and why have we decided to use that as an approach to the clothing system?
Well, layering in a clothing system is something that's been recognized for as long as people have been wearing clothing. We can go back probably thousands of years, but certainly we can see from climbers and dead climbers found on Everest from expeditions in the 1930s and 40s that they recognized the value of having different layers of clothing to do different jobs to keep them warm and alive in very, difficult situations. And when it comes to the outdoor world today, whether it's the military or someone playing golf or someone going climbing or skiing, the outdoor world is most definitely focused on layering systems. And what this means is that they separate out the roles that each garment in a layering system plays. So the traditional 3-layer system used by the outdoor industry would be a next to skin layer, which is called a base layer, and it has a specific job. That job is to transmit moisture away from the body to keep you cool and dry, and so you're not actually getting damp, or warm and dry in case of cold weather, but it transfers moisture. And then there's a mid layer, which is something which is normally a variable choice. Do you put it on or do you not? And that is purely responsible for retaining body heat if you choose to wear it. And then your outside layer is responsible for keeping the wind from you to stop wind chill, and it stops you getting wet in the event that it rains. But modern technology being what it is, it also enables that moisture that's been sucked away from your body by the base layer to be driven through and to keep you dry. But they separate the 3 layers. That's the way that layering systems work. Now, in motorcycling, we've been through a huge revolution in the last 10 years anyway. But we're in a situation now where many manufacturers are making garments which don't really give full consideration to the layering system. You can buy a garment which is expected to keep you safe from abrasion should you crash and slide down a road, keep you safe from impact, keep you dry in the event of wet weather, keep you cool in the event of hot weather, keep you insulated should you need it. And modern technology being what it is, these things are possible. But putting all of this functionality into one garment makes for a particularly big and bulky garment, and means that you're always going to be, always is a strong word, you're often going to be compromising in terms of what you would ideally like to be wearing, because this garment is expected to do everything. And whilst it kind of covers the basis of doing everything reasonably well, it doesn't do anything particularly well. So what we tried to do was we went back to the basic idea of layering, and we said, okay, we need a little bit more complexity than a typical outdoor situation, because in addition to being dry and warm for the base layer, and being insulated and being kept dry again from external rain ingress and water, and having a breathable shell, we do also need to have abrasion resistance and impact protection. But rather than having all these in one garment, what happens if we separate these out? What happens if we have a number of layers and we enable people, because we make the system so light and so packable and so simple, we make sure that any rider, no matter how small the bike they're riding, can take all the parts, all the component parts of this system with them, and choose every single day or every hour of every day, when they look around them, the exact layers that they need to make the perfect clothing system for them at that given moment in time.
And I guess it also kind of fits with this idea of light is right, that if you have one system of clothing that provides you all the layers that you need, it means that you don't have to carry other clothes, which means that you have less luggage, which means that you're traveling lighter, which means that you can do more technical trails, and that you can have a very different experience on the bike on your trip if it's all connected, I guess.
100% correct. And that is the ultimate basis of the idea of layering up motorcycle clothing like this. It's all about making your trip better and more enjoyable, and being free from the type of clutter that you often have to carry. You don't have one huge, great big heavy motorcycle jacket which you wear all day, and then which you take off and you put somewhere. You might want to go for a walk around the town, or what do you do with it? Do you chain it to your bike? Do you walk around town with this thing? Or do you just take off the lightweight waterproof shell that you've got on, pack it into your luggage where nobody can see it, and then you just walk around in an unobtrusive layer underneath? You don't need to have lots of layers of clothing. I mean, a classic example for the layering system that I wore to ride down to Africa over Christmas, I set out from the UK on the 16th of December. It was pouring with rain. I had 600 kilometers to do on the motorway to get to the ferry. I then went on a ferry for 24 hours. I rode across Spain, going through Madrid. There was snow falling, whilst I was doing an 800-kilometer day down to southern Spain. Southern Spain, the sun came out. A week later, I was in sand dunes, trapped in a sand bowl in Morocco, with an air temperature, certainly in the sun, of 25 or 30 degrees. And in every single one of those scenarios, on a bike with no more than probably 15 kilograms of luggage, including all the clothing I stood up in, I was always warm and dry and comfortable. Never felt as if I was over encumbered at any point when I was doing whatever I was doing, whether I was on the ferry or whether I was on 2 ferries, whether I was out eating or hanging around alongside my baby bag in the desert. I always had the right clothing, and yet I was carrying almost nothing with me. I never got cold, I never got too hot. It's a great way, and when the trails got technical, I never felt as if I had, well, I always feel as if I've got too much on my bike, but I always want less. But realistically, I've got to the point now where I don't believe you could ever carry any less than I carry on my bike currently, and part of that ability is the clothing choices that you make.
Great. And I guess the other thing is, for people that aren't necessarily trying to pack everything and do multi-day trips, is that if you live somewhere hot, you don't need to buy the waterproof bit.
Absolutely right. You know, there are some people who are going to be so lucky, and we certainly think lucky today, sat here, it's getting chilly now, that they may never buy a waterproof shell. They don't need a waterproof shell. There are some people, you and I, we're probably never going to buy a mesh jacket, because that's not what happens here in the UK. And so, yeah, the point is that you can pick and choose, and you can always have the perfect clothing for your situation. But I like to think the nice thing is that a lot of our customers do choose occasionally, once a year. They may well choose to go and do something a little more adventurous. You know, maybe they will jump on a ferry and go to Spain, or perhaps if you're in North America, you might choose to head south a little bit further than you would normally, and it's going to get hot. You don't have to buy a complete new set of clothing or kit. You can just add one more layer. You can just take out one thing, add another, and all of a sudden, for the price of a fairly, relatively cheap purchase, you can extend the capability of your clothing by another 20 degrees, double it, 30, 40, 50, 60 degrees Fahrenheit.